Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is building a bridge to community. Getting involved in the community is easy, right? A couple of dollars here and some volunteering there and you've got missed opportunity. Companies entwined in the fabric of community attract great employees, expand their ability to create a positive impact well beyond their doors, and show TLC to the issues and purposes that matter to employees when they leave for the day. Chris Manley of Ingenious leads an open discussion about the right things to consider and what to skip when you make a commitment to being a valued contributor to your community. Okay, here we go.
So I'm going to kind of introduce what we've been doing and then just kind of open the floor for discussion after that. But I'll kind of walk you through the experiences that we have had as a company and really some of the things that we've learned about being engaged in our community. So to begin with, I'll expand a little bit more on just my own background in this and kind of how the company got into being pretty active within community organizations. So I'm a native of South Carolina. I've lived here for most of my life. I've been involved in a lot of different forms of service in the community, even in youth. In college, I spent a little time on a island in the Bahamas repairing homes that basically have been completely underwater twice as a result of two back-to-back hurricanes. So about 4 months of that was working with a relief organization down there, coordinating U.S. volunteer teams that were coming over. 2 weeks after I got back home, Hurricane Katrina hit. I spent about 3 years of my life being raised in Southeast Louisiana, so I had a little bit of emotional connection there. And over the course of a year, I co-led about 5 teams of people to the New Orleans area with about 400 people going down there to volunteer. So that ended up leading to me founding a nonprofit that Glenn mentioned earlier, and I still lead that organization. It focuses on eliminating substandard housing in the upstate of South Carolina, which is kind of the northernmost counties here in our state. Well, all of that happened to me prior to starting Ingenious, which was about 7 years ago. But when we did start Ingenious, I brought to the table my background in nonprofit management, as well as the history of working with a lot of different small businesses. I started working in small business in grade school. So it's something that I'm very familiar with and have kind of grown up with that. Well, long story short, we saw the need that small businesses have for trusted partners who price their services well, look beyond just the minimum that we can do, but really look to take care of our clients. And that's what Ingenious started out doing. But as we got more into what we're doing, we realized that nonprofits have that need as well. And businesses need to understand the overall need, the overall role in their community of those nonprofits. And if our community isn't a great place to live, it severely limits recruiting new employees to our area. It makes it difficult for existing employees to stay in our area if they're being recruited elsewhere. It also, if community organizations in your area aren't supported, it makes less successful businesses over the long haul. So in Ingenious, we really see our responsibility more than just being a provider of small business websites and marketing, but that responsibility stretches to providing a great workplace for our employees. Many of these things are tenets of the Small Giants community, making it a very vibrant place to live in the community that we live and be in business. We also want to support other organizations that make those two things possible. So now more on to kind of the story of Ingenious's history of community giving. Well, it started out as a disaster, like many areas I served in formerly. First, it started out with a financial disaster. So our company was founded in January of 2008. And we are very proud to call companies like the Walt Disney Company, General Electric, Apple, and Microsoft peers that started in a very depressing economic time. But at the same time that we got started, nonprofits in our community, they were struggling to simply survive. For them, donations and funding had fallen off a cliff, just like the stock market had. At the same time, we were just getting started out. Businesses in our community, they were hesitant to spend money. Businesses were beyond hesitant to spend money with a firm that didn't have a background or history. So we needed a portfolio. So we saw a great fit in filling our time with pro bono work alongside a handful of paying clients in order to begin with a great portfolio. That worked for a while. It didn't necessarily work, but We got paid for most of the first year, and it accomplished its purpose. We ended that first year with a great portfolio. We ended up serving a lot of great nonprofits. But as we began to grow, we realized that the long-term commitment to serving those clients that were nonprofits started to catch up with us. We realized it was becoming a disaster in its own right unless we brought some structure around it. So the thing that made it even worse is the word had gotten around in our community that we did a lot of pro bono work. So we got dozens of requests every month from nonprofits in our community to help them out. And by help them out, we mean for free. So in 2010, that led to the launch of our Ingenious Grants program. And it was the first step that we took in providing structure around our corporate giving. Nonprofits from our community that also serve in our community, that was important to us, that they're based here, they serve here, could now apply for our services. We reviewed their applications, and we selected one fantastic organization to work with. Now, the bad part of that is we had to turn down several dozens of other nonprofits that applied, but it encouraged, we did encourage them to apply the next year, as this will be the beginning of an annual grants program. So all in all, this grants program that we started, it accomplished two things. First, it established a way for us to be supportive of community nonprofits. The second, and very important for us, it established a formal way for us to refer nonprofits and not consistently tell them no without some kind of formal vetting process. Putting that kind of structure in place was incredibly helpful, particularly for me and others in our organization that are involved in the community that meet nonprofit leaders consistently. It was important for us to have structure around it so we could refer people somewhere and not just constantly tell them no. The second challenge we had is that our team, the team that we had was growing, and they wanted to volunteer. At the time, and even now, I was the executive director of a nonprofit. So every single one of our employees at the time, including myself, had at one point received a W-2 from a nonprofit organization in their history. Our team was passionate about spending time with nonprofits without a W-2, but with one coming from us. So we had to create boundaries. So this led to a formalized paid vacation program. What we did is we gave our employees the ability to take time off to volunteer, as well as a flex time program, basically giving employees the ability to volunteer during the day by shifting their hours they work for us. It also led to what we call now the Ingenious Volunteers Program. At present, this program gives all of our full-time employees who have been with us for at least a year 2 paid days each year to volunteer with a recognized nonprofit. The combination of those three things has really allowed our employees, mostly without the need for paid vacation days, to serve on local nonprofit boards, to spend time in service to others, and to really get hands-on in volunteering in the community. Which for us has been a great opportunity both to meet new people in the community, but also for our employees to feel really great about where they work, that they can be out and about at 2 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon volunteering in the community. So the use of that flex time has really helped with boards as well, because by allowing them to serve on a board that they may meet from 1 to 2:30, like one of our employees, they can simply come in a little bit early or work a little bit late that day, incorporate that into their lunch break and so forth in order to serve on that board. The third challenge, yeah, Glenn?
Chris, I have a question for you about that point. Was there any particular program or organization that you referenced when building that flex time program? Was there something that you emulated or that you looked to apply to Ingenious on its own?
No, it really was kind of an organic development internally, because we realized that people were wanting to serve on these boards, but generally they met during the day and they couldn't find time to get away because, well, we have office hours. So it really just came about of, at first there was a few informal requests of, hey, do you mind if I start coming in at 7:30 every third Thursday of the month, so that I can, take my lunch break and go to this 90-minute board meeting for this board that I serve on. And over time, it just became more of a formalized thing where we said, anybody here who wants to serve on a board, this is an option for you. And we want to support you in doing that. We want to make it possible for you to do that. And even if you want to use those paid volunteer days to volunteer a whole day with this organization every once in a while, do it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So the third challenge that we had was what to do about giving opportunities that come up during the year outside of our grants program, because there were several that started coming up that we really liked the opportunity to support these organizations, but it didn't really fit within that structure for the grants program, which gradually grew to working with 2 different organizations every year. But still, we had some other causes that we wanted to support that just didn't fit that timeline for the grants. And we also got dozens of requests every year to, again, help nonprofit causes in our community. While our services cost us cash, they're cheaper than cash due to our margins. So in other words, some of your businesses fit this model, some of them don't. But by offering our services to nonprofits, it actually came at much less of a cost than just simply writing them a check to us as a company. So we realized that we haven't necessarily traditionally been a cash-rich venture. We were founded during the recession. We've been completely funded through bootstrapping. So this left our marketing and publicity budget also underfunded, in addition to just having cash to give away. So we made a choice. We said, let's create a sponsorship portion of our marketing budget and leverage that budget resource to sponsor local media-rich events and organizations so that we can gain increased name recognition at the same time that we're supporting organizations in our community. So when we paired it with our much smaller budget for lead acquisition programs, it was a pretty good match. When potential clients get a call from us, meet us, or receive a piece of communication from us, we want them to recognize our name. And that's something that's happening now. This strategy has led our name and logo to be featured next to massive multi-billion-dollar companies at both local and statewide events, including Google, Michelin, Wells Fargo, TD Bank. That's not bad for a little 10-person company with a pretty small cash marketing budget. The exposure that we get through those strategic sponsorships puts our brand in front of nearly 500,000 people a year. It also puts us at events with a combined attendance of over 100,000 people a year. So that alone won't get us new clients, but what it will do is make our brand recognizable when our account execs meet people in the community to engage them in business. So by combining the need to give in the community and the desire to support organizations in the community, we've really tried to leverage that with sponsorship opportunities that puts our name out there. And in some cases, even sought out specific opportunities that had great name recognition and had great exposure within our target demographic. So pairing those up has allowed us to both give, but also to receive quite a bit in exchange for that. So all in all, at Ingenious, our community giving comes from the heart. It's part of who we are. It's part of what we do. Just based on my personal history, it's something that we would do, even if it didn't make fiscal sense. And we wouldn't be ourselves without it. In 2014, we gave away over $50,000 to local organizations. And that's a number we could never justify by our financial statements without a huge heart behind it. So that alone doesn't build a strong case for a for-profit business. But it has to make sense and accomplish a business purpose as well for it to be justifiable. So here are some of the measurable benefits that we found just through these 3 programs that we've implemented in terms of maintaining a strong tradition of community service and helping to justify getting involved in that in the beginning. So first of all, it gives us an immediate leg up over competitors, particularly in our community where a lot of people here are very community-centered. Our clients and prospects, they realize how giving we are as a company, and nearly always that paints us in a more positive light over competitors who are not as well known for their charitable pursuits. That's something in surveying potential clients, in surveying our clients in terms of why they chose us to do business with us. That's consistently one of the most highest ranking parts of why they chose us over a competitor. Second is it builds a stronger community around us. Greenville's not a huge city. We will reach a point in time where we need to recruit people from outside of this city. And we've already faced times where we must compete to keep that good talent in our city. So it's important for us as a company with trying to retain people in our community, but also at some point start recruiting people from other communities to this place to make sure we've got a great, vibrant place to work. And we can't leave that up to just huge companies in our city. We've got to take ownership of that ourselves, even as a fairly small venture. Thirdly, in 2014, from the 17 organizations that we support through our community giving programs, we receive nearly 24 referrals for new business. The vast majority of those became new clients. Our conversion rate for referrals from our nonprofit grant clients is nearly 1-to-1. So that's something where the referrals that they're sending in are incredibly high valued. And while it's not something that we do because it pays us, it does pay. Number 4 is it generates publicity. Every time we give, we take pictures. We send out press releases, and they make a splash. It keeps our brand in front of people even more, and gives us an excuse to be in the local media. So that's always a good justifying part of the bottom line. And then last but not least, number 5, it promotes a stronger, healthier team. As our community service has increased, so is our employee retention. Their involvement in organizations has increased, and we've also seen increasement in job satisfaction and in employee engagement. Every time we do that survey once a year, the more and more we get involved in the community, the more those scores increase. We can't find any other single factor that correlates with that. So for us, doing good creates good things for us. We're 7 years in, and while we've had our ups and downs, it's established a firm reputation in the community, and that's something that we're known throughout the community everywhere we go. So that's the story of how we got involved in the community.
Great. Thanks, Chris. We'll go ahead and we'll open this up to questions. If anybody has one, just raise your hand and we'll get you going. I've got some questions, but I want to give everybody else a chance to interject first. Anybody? Bueller?
I have one. Chris, do you have any difficulty at all getting some of your staff engaged in some of these community projects? Are all staff on board with this, or are there some that are a little slow in coming to the table?
Sure. Some are more engaged than others, certainly. Looking across the 10-person team, we've got some people that they volunteer and or serve on the boards of 3 or 4 different organizations at once. There are others that may not have really found a spot to start getting involved. What we find is that it's not for a lack of interest in getting involved. Sometimes it's the length of time that they've been in this role and really getting comfortable with this role before they start spending time out of the office. Also, for a few of our people that I've worked with individually, it's been finding the right opportunity. There may not be an organization, because we don't have any requirements that people volunteer with organizations we already support. They can go choose to spend their time wherever. But in some cases, it's finding the right place, and helping our employees find a way to get involved.
Chris, do you ever find yourself having to say no to an organization that an employee, a singular employee, wants to champion?
Yes and no. We would never say no to an employee who wants to champion that on their own in terms of using their paid volunteer time, in terms of using flex time, in terms of what the company can give. Yes, we've said no multiple times to organizations that employees are very close to. And part of that just comes from we had to set a limit on what we do and make sure that what we're doing in many ways is as strategic as it is philanthropic.
My follow-up question to that is, what percentage is the strategic decision versus the philanthropic decision? Is it, are there opportunities where, somebody's very high profile, but you're not as passionate about that company, and so you're willing to take on that partnership because of the strategic advantages, and then vice versa, where it's much, much smaller, maybe much closer to your heart, but doesn't have as much of a strategic component to it?
Sure. To kind of compare 2 of our different programs. So I mentioned the first program I mentioned was our Ingenious Grants program. That's something that it's a competitive grant process. That versus kind of the third program I talked about, which is where we strategically focus our sponsorship dollars in terms of gaining name recognition. The selection process for those 2 are totally different from each other. For the latter one, the one where we're looking for recognition in the community, yes, name recognition, brand recognition of that organization and their event is paramount to us actually saying yes to them. because that we're trying to really have a strategic approach of what kind of publicity can we get out of this? What kind of name recognition can we create in the community? And how well does their event, how well does it line up with our target demographic and people who we engage for services? The first one, our grants program, that's not the intent at all. That's not a qualifier. That's not a qualification. Now, given we do ask those organizations to help promote us, and typically many of them make us a sponsor of an event. They list us in their annual report and all that kind of stuff. But to be strategic there, we've really set our strategic guidelines along which organizations can benefit from having our types of services the most in any given year. So we have, north of 2 to 3 dozen organizations apply every year, and we have to look across the board at those and say, which 2 of these organizations are the services that we put into place going to help the most? Which ones have a complicated message that need a strategic marketing team to come on board and say, hey, this is how we need to message your organization so that people in the community understand what you do and have a clear call to action. So that's what we're looking for there. So it's still strategic, but it doesn't matter to us whether or not they have existing name recognition. It's what's the potential. How well could they use the help that we could provide to further their mission?
Hey, Chris?
Yeah.
Quick question. Most of the examples that I heard were individuals serving on boards, and there's always an alignment of, which makes a lot of sense. You can use your expertise to help that nonprofit or that particular organization. Do you do anything where you bring like several team members so that you get kind of that team building aspect, and maybe just do something that's not related to specifically to your expertise within your company, but you do something just community related, and it kind of the objectives would be a little different than what we're talking about so far, but I'm just curious the breadth of kind of things that you do.
Sure. We do a good bit of that. Some of it is natural. Some of it's organic, where employees come together and want to go volunteer together somewhere. In other cases, it's a little bit more suggested, but not necessarily forced. And it's also kind of close to the heart, because it's typically with the organization that I lead, doing home rehab, home improvements, and that kind of stuff for mostly low-income people in the community. But that's something where we can take a group of 8 people out for a day. They don't have to have any previous training or experience, and actually see the need and solve the need all in the same day. So that's one of the things that we found that's important in those kind of opportunities, and we've heard back from our staff is important, is being able to that. One of the things that they brought to the table too and said was really neat is, particularly as we as a company have been implementing a middle layer of management, I haven't been able to interact as much with our interns, with some of our other employees, really making sure that it's a vertical cross-section of your organization. That you've got the CEO working alongside an hourly employee. That kind of experience working as a team is really, really helpful.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks. That's very similar to some things that I think we've experienced here at Real. It may not be directly related to our business, but the rewards at an individual level, and for those people that work together and across the company, like you're talking about in the stratus of the company, it's paid huge dividends, not necessarily monetarily, but from a team building and satisfaction of the coworkers.
Yeah.
Quick question, by show of hands, how many of you have a program or programs similar to what Chris is doing?
Yeah.
Somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim, Kyle?
Yeah.
Kyle, would you give us a little bit of insight into what you're doing and maybe what you're doing differently than what Chris is doing? Jim, I'm getting you next.
Okay.
Here, go ahead, Sherry, and just share. Sure, we have something that we call, it's been done differently over the years, but currently we have this longstanding practice at Real of giving 10% of our pre-tax profits back to various global communities. And so kind of how we accomplish that is through a team called the Community Involvement Team. And Sherry leads that team, so I'll let her just talk about a few of the things and a few different types of things that we do with that money.
Yeah, we don't currently use it's kind of part of our culture, who we are, and as Kyle said, we've always done it, giving 10% of our pre-tax profits back. It's like if we're feeling like if we're blessed with profits, we're going to turn around and give back. We don't use it to, currently, we don't use it as a marketing employ for our company or to or target it in any way like that towards our customers or increasing market share or anything like that. It's just we're giving back to the community, and we try to do things here locally for our community here in the Twin Cities, and we'll go national as well when disasters hit more, and that's more in terms of like check writing. Here locally, we'll do things like Feed My Starving Children, where we try to get service projects where we're actually going out and serving, and we'll likely give a monetary donation as well. But the point, we feel that we all, not only are we enhancing hopefully the community around us, but we're enhancing the lives of our coworkers here in terms of building relationships, and kind of what you're talking about with the CEO, working next to the hourly worker, and it's being real with people. And we also have the last 3 years, this is the third year, we have an international project where we go to the Dominican Republic right now. We're building a school there. We've committed to about a 5-year project there. Every year we go and we build onto the school. So adding grade levels, and we bring all of our international communities. We have coworkers that apply to go. We have about 15. We have 100 coworkers here. We have another 25 or so in the Netherlands. They all have the opportunity to apply, and there's a selection process, and 15 get to go each year. It's all expense paid. You just have to give up a week of your PTO time, and you go serve together. Some people have never traveled. Some people have never been in a remote area of the world. And so anyway, it's been a huge positive experience. But yeah, so anyway, any questions?
Sherry, Kyle, would you guys be willing to share that application, if it's written down, share that application process you have for that larger scale travel philanthropy that you're doing?
Yeah,
it's pretty simple. So.
Yep.
Fantastic. And everybody that's participating, when Kyle and Sherry share that with me, I will get it sent out to everybody so that you can have a look at that. Jim, I know that you are in a relatively unique situation to where most of your team's virtual, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, all of our team is virtual. Everybody in our company works from a home office or any remote location that they want. We were just on the news last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, local news, for having a company with an unlimited vacation policy. So our people are able to work in philanthropic situations whenever they want, and all of the staff are involved in different things. One other organization that I head up was started 5 years ago, is a separate 501c3, and this organization is known as a business tree. That's a business ministry, and we sell kettle corn. And we have this kettle corn operation, and we sell Amazing Grace kettle corn. And all of our staff have been involved with some of these events. We go out to festivals, and we sell this kettle corn. And over the last 5 years, we just tallied it up. Over the last 5 years, we've done $154,000 in sales, which equates to about 30,000 bags of kettle corn. And all of those profits go into ministry. And our position is we don't care where or what ministry it goes into, as long as it's a ministry. So when we have groups from various organizations that volunteer in the booth, their organizations are the ones that participate. One of our key executives, her boyfriend, goes on mission trips to India once a year. So the two of them will be working different events in the booth, and the ministry money goes toward his mission trip. We've had youth groups. We've had a group called Pilots for Christ. In fact, the pilots bought their own outfit. It's about a $15,000 investment, and they sell Amazing Grace kettle corn at air shows, and they use those profits to fund fuel for their planes, for their Mercy flights. And so it's just a fun way. Now this year we're we're going to change our focus because we're all getting kind of burned out. It's the hardest work I do. It's the kind of thing like it's the hardest job I have, but I don't get a dime, which is fine because it's worth every hour. But it is a lot of work to do these. So this year we're going to cut back on the number of festivals that we go to, and we're going to be focusing on expanding the ministry to other organizations. Any other organization that wants to have a self-sustaining ministry, we've got the model, and we'll help them to do it. So that's a couple of things that we do as a company.
Fantastic, Jim. Are there any questions for Jim about the work that he's doing?
Well, this is kind of a question to Jim as well as anybody else who's been setting anything up. What's the minimum amount of groundwork that you guys need to lay in order to have all of this take off successfully? I know there's usually going to be a communication with the team or a discussion, but I mean, is there anything that we can't afford not to do these types of programs?
We'll go to Kyle and Sherry first, and then Jim.
Yeah, Jim, the only advice that I would have is from the top down, have great clarity for whoever that decision maker is as to why you're doing it. And I think Chris touched on that very well of saying, here's why we're doing it. Because, there's companies like Target in our area that started back with the Dayton family, and they still give back to the community, and it's a good thing. Their motivation for doing it has changed over the years, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just having clarity so that if you have a very large organization, you're going to have, an obvious distribution of thoughts and ideas of why you should do it and what the objective should be. And I think having the decision maker that owns that decision, whatever that is in your company, have clarity and communicate that clearly, that'll take care of some of the later kind of scuffles that can occur as things proceed along. Because, when Rail was struggling a lot in 2008 and 2009, there wasn't anything there to give away, so there weren't any issues. And now it's grown into a pretty sizable chunk of dough every year. And so Sherry and that team that I mentioned earlier, the community involvement team, will be addressing the board next week, going over kind of what they did last year. And so it's at a level where the board reviews it once a year to understand it. So my only advice would be just have great clarity as to why you're doing it, what your expectations are in return, whether that's we do it because that's what we think is the right thing, or if you're going to tie it to your marketing efforts and you expect a return on that, or whatever it is. So that's my only advice. I don't know, Sherry, if you get anything.
Jim?
I really don't have anything else to add to that. The business tree is separate from the company, and we just and I guess the nice part about that is it doesn't interfere with business operations, except it pulls me out of the operations sometime when I have to be at a festival or early in the day. But I think that's great advice, having good clarity around why you do it. Because if you're doing it just because you think that it's going to, get you in a newspaper or whatever, I think you have to do these things for the right reasons, and it has to be genuine, or it'll just backfire on you.
This goes out to anybody who wants to answer, but I'm going to start with Chris. Chris, how do you address this commitment to community in your hiring process?
So we've actually, just so that everybody's kind of knows my background with Small Giants, I've only been a part of the community for about 6 months now, and it came to the summit in September, and when we came home, we actually started looking at the comparison of the principles of the Small Giants versus our interview questions. And one of the things that we learned at the summit was how do we interview for our values? How do we interview for the things that matter to us most? Well, we realized we already had several questions in our standard interview questions for any new hire. And one of them is, what kind of community service are you involved in? What do you do for fun? And through those, we typically begin to figure out, are our people already seeking out opportunities to get involved in the community? So that's one of the ways that we've done that.
Fantastic. Anybody else? Does anybody else have a community commitment component in their interview process or their hiring process?
For us, I always talk about how we do our community giving here. It's a part of our culture and the giving back piece. We want to make sure people are aligned with who we are, and knowing that we've had coworkers here in the past that maybe didn't agree with the giving that we do, and saying, we need to use that to reinvest back into the company, or we need to, take that money and give it to the coworkers or whatever. And so saying that, this is not going to change, but when we talk about our values here and who we are and how we differentiate ourselves from other companies and so forth, the community giving is one aspect of that. And I too ask, what kind of community involvement things have you been involved in? But for the most part, I'm looking to see a spark, a passion when they find out about, what we do in the Dominican. I mean, there's not a lot of companies that do things like that. And, do they find that interesting? Do they find, are they putting their hand up saying, gosh, I'd love to do something like that. That's amazing. And so we talk about it, but we also, say this is, as much as it's important that we get the person with the right skills in here, it's important that we get just as important that the person fits who we are. And this is our culture. And when you enter in, you're conforming to who we are. But yes, we all make up that culture, but we want them aligned with our values, and community giving is one aspect of that. So.
Sounds like what you are doing is hiring for culture first. And,
that's what yeah.
And that, I think, is just vital. Culture first, skills second. Most companies do it the other way around.
Yes.
And I think that's where they get tripped up.
Yeah.
Agree.
I'm going to kick this to Daniel. I'm going to call him out because he is in a dramatically different business environment in Brazil than the rest of us are domestically. Daniel, are there any experiences that you have with working with your community that you might not experience domestically?
Yeah, here we try to follow what was being said. We generally donate our expertise for some projects. We work on many educational projects around community, and we were awarded last year an award on social responsibility by the mayor of the town, and another one by a not-for-profit association that works for entrepreneurs. So this means that our work with the community has been starting to be recognized. One of the questions I would make is how you generally market these social help, because generally we do that because we really want to help community, but sometimes our customers don't really know what we have been doing to help our community and to make the world a better place. So besides working on educational projects, we also join some specific campaigns. So we have a recycling campaign here. So we, in the company, we recycle all our waste. And last year we recycled over 2 tons of waste produced by the company. And we donate this material for a not-for-profit organization that collects this material and sells and makes money to provide a living for people who work in this cooperative. We also have another project for a specific campaign for helping for kids in Christmas. So we try to join all our customers in bringing some gifts that we could donate for poor children in some charities that help these kids. We have also in the Children's Day in October here in Brazil. I don't know if you have a similar festive day for celebrating Kids Day. And we try to have these campaigns to involve, first of all, our team in knowing and in making it recurrent in the company that we are always helping someone somehow, but also to try to engage our customers. That's the most difficult part, in collaborating with these campaigns and donating their time, because they bring what they are donating, you know, but helping through us, the community where we live. We had a campaign to collect milk for elderly people in the asylum, in the hospital, you know, so we have a campaign a month so that we can help different targets and get involved with the community around, besides the long-term projects that are the educational ones.
Fantastic. Thank you for that insight. Does anybody have a question for Daniel about the work that they're doing in Brazil? Okay, I wanted to call out the guys that are hiding behind muted microphones right now. To the Be Found Online team, Steve and the rest of the guys, I know that you do some pro bono work. How do you select the organizations that you work with?
Let me start by saying most of the reason we're on today is to learn what other people are doing, because we need to grow up. We do pro bono work. Most of it comes to us, or it's organizations that somebody is already familiar with. So we do work with autism foundations or autism groups, because I've got a son on the spectrum. We do some work for the American Epilepsy Foundation because I've got a dear friend whose son has a chronic form of epilepsy. So most of it comes through network that way. And we sort of we try to set reasonable limits and boundaries with those organizations, but we'll help people get Google grants so they can spend money driving their message and things like that. And there's usually not a big screening process. It's for love, not money. So if somebody says, hey, I've got an organization that I support. We did some work not too long ago for a greyhound rescue because it was the passion of one of the employees. And one of the things that we're looking to in 2015, and we just talked about it yesterday again, was charity clarity is what I'm calling it. More clarity around our charitable efforts. And I've listed from the meeting here today 5 different categories of things that we could focus on, and we need to think about it, because really the only thing that we've done, the grants thing that Chris was talking about, and I listened to everybody talk about it, I'm like, wow, we could do all of these things and it would be pretty easy. So we just have to drink some more Kool-Aid, I think.
Fantastic. I'm going to come back to you in 3 months, and you're going to do a interview about how you've made the changes in your company to implement those. Careful about what you say you're going to do. So.
As long as it's a face-to-face interview.
Absolutely. I can do that. Any reason to get to Chicago. You guys are a good one. So we've got time for about one more question. I wanted to we have somebody that's on their first fishbowl, and that's Jonathan and you'll have to excuse me if I mispronounce this, Dig You Design. Jonathan, who's hiding with his camera off, I wanted to see if you had any questions, and if there was a particular insight that you gained or something that you'd like to contribute. You can't escape me.
I have a question.
Okay, go for it, Daniel. We'll let Jonathan think.
My question I have already made, in fact, but we couldn't debate. I would like to know what kind of marketing do you do in your companies for your social work? So how do you take profit of this community work we do to engage new consumers in buying from you because they relate to what you are doing?
Chris, I think it probably starts with you, since you said that this is not only a component of how you decide who you work with, but this is a one-to-one referral generator for you in some ways. So,
yeah, So just to make sure I understand the question correctly, how do we use our community involvement in order to generate new and more business?
Yes.
Okay.
In my case, generally we help charities
Mm-hmm.
that are very poor people. They would never buy from us because they wouldn't have the money for that. And then we need people from higher social classes to buy from us, so they are not connected to the same community.
Okay. I think really the thing that you've got to do is educate your clients and your prospective clients about what you're doing, because it provides a feel-good aspect for if you're looking at 3 different vendors to do something, and they're generally all about the same price, they're all going to do good work for you. They have good good reputations. That's one thing for us that we know has set us apart. They look at our company and they say, y'all are so involved in stuff. You really believe in supporting our community, and I mean we mostly do business within a 30-mile radius of our headquarters, so it makes it easy for us to focus on that community aspect. But that feel-good aspect is very vital. It's just you got to communicate that. We do it throughout the year. It starts with even just kind of what started as just hey, we should be, encouraging people to check out all the nonprofits we serve. So we do have a lot of paying nonprofits. 2 Thanksgivings ago, we started an email that we send out the week of Thanksgiving every year saying thank you to our clients. If you're looking for a way to show your thanks for the community we live in over the next month as we go through the holidays, here's some awesome organization support. We put the logo of every single nonprofit client we have in that email that we sent out to all of our clients and all of our tribe, all of our fans. It ended up being 30-something logos with links to their websites. But I mean, that both got those organizations super excited. But we also heard from our kind of our base of contacts that people engage some of those organizations to get their companies involved in them after the fact. So it's something that had a direct impact on the organizations, but it's something that also made it very clear, this is what we do, and we believe in supporting our community.
One of our clients is a CPA firm, and they actually have a separate page on their web page talking about all of the activities that the employees are involved in. And visiting with them showed us how important that is to their culture. Those activities have really helped solidify that team. We talked about doing the same thing in our company, setting up a web page called eDoc on the Ground, talking about the individual programs that all of us are involved in, but we've not gotten that off the ground yet. It's still in the thinking mode.
I'm looking forward to chronicling that process of you getting that off the ground.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. We just launched a new website, in fact, a couple of weeks ago, so it's all we can do to get that, in good shape right now. But before the end of the year, I'm sure we'll have something like that up.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more Fishbowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.